Mandy Hale reminds us that happiness is letting go of what you think your life is supposed to look like and celebrating it for everything that it is. The Dalai Lama reminds or tells us, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Rebecca will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan and Mary as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, Love Will Guide Us, number 131. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you've joined us today, and we acknowledge that our UUCC sanctuary stands on land that was originally occupied by coastal Chumash indigenous peoples whose ancestors lived primarily in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU7 principles. They're not just ours. Today's service centers around the third principle. We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Spiritual growth isn't about a vertical ascent to heaven, but about growth in every dimension at once. It's spirituality in 3D. Growth in spirit doesn't measure one's proximity to God above, but rather the spaciousness of one's own soul, its volume, its capacity, its size. We need souls that can take in the world in all its complexity and diversity and yet still maintain our integrity. And we need souls that can love and be in relationship with all of this complexity. Instead of fight or flight, we need a spiritual posture of embrace. My name is Randy Schwalbe, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you're not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all of our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Janet Cooper or a person on the board if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of our community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now sing the affirmation.
Lord is the spirit of this church, and service is His prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to sing the truth in freedom, and to have, and to have, and to have one another.
We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your Zoom hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the reactions icon. When Diane calls your name, please unmute yourself and then speak.
Okay, I think we have an announcement from Randy.
Yes, indeed. Yes, our July Worship Committee meeting will take place, yes, I know it's August, but it'll take place tomorrow, August 2nd at 5 o'clock on Zoom. So all Worship Committee members, please be in attendance if you can. And if you are interested in joining us, if you're not in the committee, please send me an email and I'll send you a link. Okay.
Thank you, Randy. Janet Cooper, welcome back. If you would unmute yourself and tell us your announcement.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Yeah, I just wanted to share today that the United Way of San Luis Obispo has relaunched their annual Stuff the Bus program. The goal of this program is to purchase and distribute 500 backpacks filled with essential school supplies to children in need in San Luis Obispo County. At the moment, there are about 80 school supply kits short for all grade levels. And these kits run between about $12 and $15 each. I would like to encourage everybody to sign on to the UnitedWaySLO.org, visit the Stuff the Bus page, and donate as many school supply kits as you're comfortable with, because we'd sure like to make this promise real for all of our children. The program runs through the end of August, so we have a few more weeks left. So everybody, please consider making a donation and helping out our local children so they can return to school with the essential supplies they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. All right, Robert and Nancy, would you please unmute yourself and tell us your announcement?
Hi, this is Nancy. We've got two announcements. First is that a week from Wednesday, and I can't find the date, I think that's the 11th, the Moving Towards Racial Justice will be meeting. We'll be just watching like a 15-20 minute video at the start of the meeting I'll just share it with everybody, and then we'll talk about it. So there's no prep beforehand. Well, not for you guys. And then the next day, the 12th, we're leading, Robert and I are organizing a hike at Point Bouchon, which is like a 6.5 mile hike. Plus you have to walk there from the parking lot. So we'll meet at the Coon Creek parking lot on Thursday, August 12th at 10 o'clock. But please let us know if you're going to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That sounds like an awful lot of fun. Okay, Lou, would you please unmute yourself and tell us your announcement?
I have an unstable connection, so I don't know if you'll hear it all. Men's group meets tomorrow at the sanctuary, hopefully with Zoom. Andy will be awaiting his flight in the Seattle airport, but he promised me we'd manage to do it. The other thing I wanted to say is that Jan's piano kind of overwhelmed Mary and her guitar in that first hymn.
Thank you, Lou. All right, Joel, would you unmute yourself, please, and tell us your announcement?
Yeah, thank you, Diane. The reopening committee has been hard at work. We have set a reopening date of August 8th, which is next Sunday. We're very excited. We're going to have a hybrid service with in-person attendance limited and also Zoom. So you have your choice. There'll be an email sent out to the membership in the next day or so explaining all of the details, and please look forward to that. And we're looking forward to a successful reopening next Sunday.
Great, thank you, Joel. Let's see, I have two announcements. One is that the women's group will, as it continues to grow, will meet again on Monday, tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So anyone who would like to join us, please, any female who would like to join us, please come. We're going to be talking about girlfriends. And it's a subject I don't think we have kind of uncovered yet in terms of sharing. If you need to get in touch with me, my information is in the newsletter. The second announcement that I have is regarding the auction. So again, the date is October 16th, and it's a Saturday. Right now, the plan will probably be to have it on Zoom. And we're asking you to save any new items such as jewelry or paintings, ceramics, musical instruments, small furniture items, plants, tchotchkes that you think would be appealing to others. And also we're asking for you to consider services such as you can bake cookies or cakes or candies or cooking meals or dinners to auction off. Anybody who's a good knitter may want to create something that way, or crochet or beading, or creating your own artwork. Also, there is personal talents that you may want to teach. Maybe you have an ability to teach sign language, or well, skydiving probably wouldn't work in this particular setting, but cooking classes, and even teaching bridge, for example. We might want to get back to that as long as things are quiet out there. I'd also like just to remind you that you can invest in a gift certificate. The sponsor, you will be sponsoring a gift certificate that will be auctioned off, and you will also be supporting the merchants of Cambria. So it's a great way to raise money for the church if you're interested in maybe getting something from one of the wineries or one of the restaurants. So be thinking about that, and there'll be more on that later. Thank you. Okay, back to you, Randy.
Okay, next week, Mary Schwalbe will present The American Indian Life by the what? Oh, This American Life by Reverend Jennifer Youngson Rue. We take this time now to celebrate all those who are having a birthday this month. Birthdays are a special moment. It is a time in which you feel as if the world is taking a moment to invite you into being, just like it was on your day of birth. Wow. If you have a birthday this month, please raise your Zoom hand when Diane calls your name, unmute yourself, and please reveal your special date.
Do we have any July birthday honorees today?
August.
August, thank you. Margaret? Okay. Okay, nobody identifying at the moment. Back to you, Randy.
No, Margaret. Can we get Margaret on?
Yeah, mine is the 10th.
No, she said mine is the 10th. It's just really, really, really
Okay.
faint. You can say it. It's August.
Okay, so Margaret's birthday is August 10th. All right, so party at Margaret's. Yay. Okay, this birthday candle come on, light away. This birthday candle honors all the friends and family members of this community who are also celebrating birthdays this month. Okay. Take it away, Mary. We're good. All right, sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all of the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The first reading is a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. Someone once asked me what I regarded as the 3 most important requirements for happiness. My answer was a feeling that you have been honest with yourself and those around you, a feeling that you have done the best you could both in your personal life and in your work, and the ability to love others. But there's another basic requirement, and I can't understand now how I forgot it at the time, and that is the feeling that you are in some way useful. Usefulness, whatever form it may take, is the price we pay for the air we breathe and the food we eat and the privilege of being alive. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. The second reading is a quote by Priva Narasimhan. So how can you be useful? It's simple. Make others stand a little taller. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be an inventor. You don't need to have a wall of diplomas. You simply need to be human, to be useful to others. Please join in singing, "What Gift Can We Bring?" number 404.
What gift can we bring? What present, what token, what words can convey the joy of this day? When grateful we come, remembering, rejoicing, what song can we offer in honor and praise? This gift we now bring, this present, this token, these words can convey it, the joy of this day. When grateful we come, remembering, rejoicing, this song we now offer in honor and praise.
Today, we begin our annual Summer Sermons by Other People series. During the month of August, members of the UU community of Cambria will present sermons written and delivered by UU ministers or other prominent members of the religious and academic communities. Our readers are required to seek permission to present these sermons, and the sermon will be introduced by the reader, him or herself. Today's sermon is titled "Being Useful" by Darian, Foroux, to be delivered by Rebecca Hendricks. Rebecca.
Good morning. After being a member of the UUCC We Care Committee in 2020, and then sharing the story of my mother, a dedicated volunteer and someone who cared about helping everyone in a small Minnesota farm town, I looked for words that would continue my journey into helping others and making the world a better place. I found this writing by Darian, an entrepreneur and blogger from the Netherlands. His website includes the following words. I started this blog in 2015 after I felt stuck. My career wasn't giving me any fulfillment. I was only working to earn money, not to make a contribution. At the start of the year, my grandmother passed away. And that forced me to rethink everything I was doing. I committed to becoming a full-time author and online teacher. I wanted to have more freedom and make an impact. I personally love being part of similar activities in Cambria, and I admire so many people here in the church and throughout the community. And today, Darian's words are dedicated to two of my favorites, Chris Fox and Kat Lekich. For the longest time, I believed that there was only one purpose in life, and that is to be happy, right? Why else go through all the pain and hardship? It's to achieve happiness in some way. And I'm not the only person who believed that. In fact, if you look around you, most people are pursuing happiness in their lives. That's why we collectively buy stuff we don't need, go to bed with people we don't necessarily love, and try to work hard to get the approval of people we may not even like. Why do we do these things? To be honest, I don't care what the exact reason is. I'm not a scientist. All I know is that it has something to do with history, culture, media, economy, psychology, politics, the information era, and you name it. The list is endless. We are who we are. Let's just accept that. Most people love to analyze why people are not happy or don't live fulfilling lives. I don't necessarily care about the why. I care about how we can change. Just a few short years ago, I did everything to chase happiness. You buy something and you think that makes you happy. You hook up with people and think that makes you happy. You get a well paying job and think that makes you happy. You go on holiday and you think that makes you happy. But at the end of the day, you're lying in your bed, alone or next to someone, and you think, what's next in this endless pursuit of happiness? Well, I can tell you what's next. You chasing something random that you believe makes you happy. It's all a facade, a hoax, a story that's been made up. Did Aristotle lie to us when he said, happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence? I think we have to look at that quote from a different angle, because when you read it, you think that happiness is the main goal. And that's kind of what the quote says as well. But here's the thing. How do you achieve happiness? Happiness can't be a goal in and of itself. Therefore, it's not something that's achievable. I believe that happiness is merely a byproduct of usefulness. When I talk about this concept with friends, family, and colleagues, I always find it difficult to put this into words, but I'll give it a try here. Most things we do in life are just activities and experiences. You go on holiday, you go to work, you go shopping, you have drinks, you eat dinner, you buy a car. These things should make you happy, right? But they are not useful. You're not creating anything, you're just consuming or doing something. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. I love to go on vacation or go shopping sometimes. But to be honest, it's not what gives meaning to life. What really makes me happy is when I'm useful, when I create something that others can use, or even when I create something that I can use. For the longest time, I found it difficult to explain the concept of usefulness and happiness. But when I recently ran into a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the dots finally connected. Emerson says, "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well." And I didn't get that before I became more conscious of what I'm doing with my life. And that always sounds heavy and all, but it's actually quite simple. It comes down to this. What are you doing that's making a difference? Did you do useful things in your lifetime? You don't have to change the world or anything. Just make it a little bit better than before you were born. If you don't know how, here are some ideas. Help your boss with something that's not your responsibility. Take your mother to a spa. Create a collage with pictures for your significant other. Write an article about the stuff you've learned in life. Help the pregnant lady who also has a 2-year-old with her stroller. Call your friend and ask if you can help with something. Build a standing desk. Start a business and hire an employee and treat them well. That's just some stuff I like to do. You can make up your own useful activities. You see, it's not anything big, but when you do useful little things every day, it adds up to a life that is well lived, a life that mattered. The last thing I want to be is on my deathbed and realize there's zero evidence I ever existed. Recently, I read Not Fade Away by Lawrence Shames and Peter Barton. It's about Peter Barton, the founder of Liberty Media, who shares his thoughts about dying from cancer. It's a very powerful book, and it will definitely bring tears to your eyes. In the book, he writes about how he lived his life and how he found his calling. He also went to business school, and this is what he thought of his fellow MBA candidates. Bottom line, they were extremely bright people who would never really do anything, would never add much to society, would leave no legacy behind. I found this terribly sad. in the way that wasted potential is always sad. You can say that about all of us. And after he realized that in his 30s, he founded a company that turned him into a multimillionaire. I'm hardly the first person to notice that there is only the present, constantly, writes Barton in this extraordinary memoir. The present moment is lived and relived, written and rewritten. Every previous version inhabits it. Publishers Weekly says, what gives this book insight and the many other ideas that follow is the present fact that Barton, a pioneering entrepreneur in the cable television industry, was dying of stomach cancer as he wrote these words. Barton, who died in September 2002 at age 51, offers us and his wife and 3 children his final rewrite of a life filled with the optimism and idealism of his generation. Barton tells us how it is Barton tells us how it feels to die while the party is still raging, offering us glimpses of a life that packed in everything from being a professional ski bum to working as an aide to New York State Governor Hugh Carey to huge success as a visionary businessman. He helped found MTV, among other achievements. Readers will be knocked out by his honesty and his utter lack of self-pity or sentimentality. The gift of terminal cancer, according to Barton, is that it doesn't kill you all at once. It gives you time to set your house in order. It gives you time to think, to sum things up. Setting his house in order included taking his family for a balloon ride at dawn. Summing up what matters, he reminds us that it is the large and small memories of pleasure and love, those very present moments, that redeem us in the end. This is a very beautiful book about how to live. Another person who always makes himself useful is Casey Neistat. For 3 years, he regularly posted a new video about his life and work on YouTube. And in every video, he's doing something. He also talks about how he always wants to do and create something. He even has a tattoo on his forearm that says, "Do more." Being useful is a mindset. And like any mindset, it starts with a decision. One day I woke up and thought to myself, what am I doing for this world? The answer was nothing. And that day I started writing. For you, it can be painting, creating a product, helping the elderly, or anything you feel like doing. Don't take it too seriously. Don't overthink it. Just do something that's useful. Anything. When Belle Beth Cooper wrote a recent post for Buffer titled 10 Simple Things You Can Do Today That Will Make You Happier, she didn't even consider the possibility that striving for happiness might not be in our best interests. Who wouldn't want to be happier? Beth writes, happiness isn't necessarily bad for us, but I did find out recently that happiness alone isn't enough for us to feel fulfilled. Sadly, chasing happiness is really common these days, and most of us don't realize why being happy isn't enough for us to be satisfied with life. Happiness isn't all it's cracked up to be. First of all, let's look at the state of things as they are. We tend to pursue happiness as if it's something attainable, something we should be aiming to achieve. In America and similar cultures, we're pushing fairly insistently toward happiness from an abundance of self-help books, happiness coaches, and marketing campaigns. However, even living in a happy-focused culture like America doesn't mean we're more likely to be satisfied with our lives. In fact, 4 out of 10 Americans either do not think their lives have a clear sense of purpose or are neutral about whether their lives have purpose. Famous psychologist Viktor Frankl said, happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. He also said that our constant search for happiness is a problem. It is the very pursuit of happiness that thwarts happiness. A recent study actually proved this by showing that the greater emphasis its participants put on happiness, the less happy they actually were. People putting the greatest emphasis on being happy reported 50% less frequent positive emotions, 35% less satisfaction about their life, and 75% more depressive symptoms. The thing about happiness is that it's such an overused phrase and underexamined concept that we all have an idea of what it is and how it works, but this can lead us astray. We can see how dangerous our pursuit of happiness can be as opposed to happiness itself, which isn't necessarily bad for us, by looking at how scientists define it and how it affects us. Here's the crux of this whole issue. Happiness and meaning are different, and happiness without meaning really doesn't lead to a great life. Being happy is about feeling good. Meaning is derived from contributing to others or to society in a bigger way. So here's what happiness is really like, according to some recent research. It's about being a taker rather than a giver. It's about satisfying your needs and wants, so people who are happy are usually in good physical shape and can afford to buy the things they need and want. They usually have lower levels of stress and worry in their lives. So essentially, we're happy when we get what we want. This is a problem only when our happiness outweighs the meaning in our lives. Happiness without meaning characterizes a relatively shallow, self-absorbed, or even selfish life in which things go well, needs and desires are easily satisfied, and difficult or taxing entanglements are avoided. Scientists measure self-reported happiness by asking questions like, how often did you feel satisfied? And how often did you feel interested in life? Meaning, on the other hand, is quite different. It's focused outward on others rather than inward on ourselves. Researcher Roy Baumeister explained it like this. Partly what we do as human beings is to take care of others and contribute to others. This makes life meaningful, but it doesn't necessarily make us happy. Scientists test whether participants find, so I'm in really high heels up here, and I didn't expect to be so much taller on this podium. So now that I've admitted that, I'm just going to take my shoes off because it's really far to the page. So sorry for that little, entry. Okay, this is much better. Scientists test whether participants feel their lives have meaning with questions like, how often did you feel that you had something to contribute to society? How often did you feel that you belonged to a community or a social group? Apart from just thinking about others more, we also feel more like our lives have meaning when we think about the past and future, whereas happiness only pertains to the present. I found that very interesting. While happiness is an emotion felt in the here and now, it ultimately fades away, just as all emotions do. Positive affect and feelings of pleasure are fleeting. Researchers found that people who focus on the present are generally happier, but those who spend more time contemplating the future or their past are more likely to feel meaning in their lives. So now that we know the difference between happiness and meaning, we can explore how they affect us biologically and what our optimal state is for both physical and emotional health. Our bodies are good at protecting us from all the possible illnesses we could pick up each day. What's interesting about the way this works is that our emotional state can push our immune system into two different types of preparation. One prepares to fight bacterial infections, the other, viruses. Of course, this is a horribly simplified explanation of the immune system and how it works, but for our purposes, we're just looking at a small part of this that's affected by the amount of happiness and meaning in our lives. So what happens in periods of adversity, when we feel things like stress, grief, or loneliness, our bodies can trigger the activation of a stress-related gene pattern that has two features: an increase in the activity of pro-inflammatory genes and a decrease in the activity of genes involved in antiviral responses. Essentially, your body is preparing to either fight bacterial infections or viruses. Bacterial infections are a bigger risk when we face long periods of adversity, where viruses are more common when we're feeling well and interacting with lots of people. Our bodies take clues from the levels of happiness and meaning in our lives as to which kind of threat we prepare for. A recent study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by Barbara Fredrickson and Steve Cole found that people who are happy but lack meaning in their lives show the same gene expression patterns as those who are struggling with prolonged adversity. Their bodies are preparing to fight off bacterial infections. The problem with this is that if it continues in a prolonged state, it can increase the risks of major illnesses like cancer and heart disease because the body is in a constant state of inflammation. Fredrickson said that the problem isn't with being happy, but with meaningfulness being outweighed by happiness. This is when we risk affecting our immune systems in detrimental ways. And sadly, this is a fairly common state. People with high happiness scores and low meaningfulness scores formed 75% of the study's participants, and only 25% actually had more meaning in their lives than happiness. Clearly, the optimal state we should aim for is a balance between the two. Without enough meaning in our lives, we can become ill, not to mention lacking in purpose and direction. Without enough happiness, however, we'll become, well, unhappy. And who wants that? Since happiness is more common of the two and the easiest to achieve, after all, it's really just a matter of satisfying our needs and desires, remember? Let's take a look at some ways we can add meaning to our lives. I'm going to call on the work and words of Viktor Frankl to help us out here, since he really is one of the experts in finding meaning in one's life. In his best-selling book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor detailed his time spent in a Nazi concentration camp and his secret to surviving the camp despite losing all of his family members he was imprisoned with. The secret was finding meaning in even the most horrific circumstances, which he said made him more resilient to suffering. Viktor suggests 3 ways for finding meaning in our lives. Number 1, by creating a work or doing a deed. 2, by experiencing something or encountering someone. And 3, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. Let's take a closer look at each of these ways. Create a work or do a deed. When Viktor worked as a therapist in the concentration camps, he helped inmates to find meaning in their lives and bear their suffering. One example in his book is of 2 suicidal inmates who had lost all hope and could no longer find meaning in their lives. Viktor wrote that in both cases, he simply helped them to realize that life was still expecting something from them. For one of the men, who was a scientist, he had a series of books to finish. This was what the future expected of him and where he found the meaning to help him suffer through the camp. The second point that Viktor Frankl makes, experience something or encounter someone. The second man in the camps had a young child who was living abroad in a foreign country during the war. This was what Viktor helped him realize would provide meaning to his life. Viktor wrote that understanding how we are each impossible to replace will allow us to realize that we are fully responsible for our lives and continuing them. A man who becomes conscious of the responsibility he bears toward a human being who affectionately waits for him or to an unfinished work may not be able to throw away his life as easily. He knows the why for his existence and will be able to deal with almost any how. The third point is to choose the attitude you take toward unbearable suffering. I should say unavoidable suffering, which also might feel unbearable. Unavoidable suffering is as it sounds, inescapable. We have to approach it one way or another, and the way we choose to do so can improve how meaningful our lives feel. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor writes the following: everything can be taken from a man but one last thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. He also offered this example of finding meaning in suffering. Once, an elderly general practitioner consulted me because of his severe depression. He could not overcome the loss of his wife, who had died 2 years before and whom he had loved above all else. Now, how could I help him? What should I tell him? I refrained from telling him anything, but instead confronted him with a question. What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you? Oh, he said, for her, this would have been terrible. How she would have suffered. Whereupon I replied, you see, doctor, such a suffering has been spared her, and it is you who spared her this suffering, but now you have to pay for it by surviving and mourning her. He said no word, but shook my hand and calmly left the office. None of these suggestions are easy, but then the benefits of living a life full of meaning are unlikely to come from actions that are easy. We've got to put in the hard work if we want our lives to be both full of happiness and meaning. I gotta put my...
Let's see. Thank you, Rebecca, for a very profound sermon. Normally, at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, and hopefully the last one, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the screen. These methods are posted in the newsletter and on the UUCC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You're invited to participate in the blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Let us now sing the doxology.
Rejoice in love we know and share, in love and beauty everywhere. Rejoice in truth that makes us free, and in the good that yet shall be.
Please join in singing the closing hymn, We Would Be One, number 318.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Let us now recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen. But please remain muted. Diane will call on you when you raise your Zoom hand. Rebecca?
Okay. And again from Priya Narsimhan. Reach out on a bad day. Tell others their strengths. Help others avoid mistakes. Share what you figured out the hard way. Listen without judgment. Believe in others and tell them.